I'm trying to get them all.
Oh, we did
at
it
the
though.
same time.
We did
Now
it.
they're up. They're up. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Monday Night Live.
Kate's favorite night of the week.
Kate's favorite night. I'm Dean Nixon. Kate Semmens, TurningLeaf Health Center
everybody.
in sunny St. George, Utah. We've got three different venues going. We've got two Facebooks and an Instagram.
Yeah, join us on your favorite social media platform.
There you go. So we're going to be looking all over. That's been the fun thing, going back and watching these and see our eyes going
Dart
from
everywhere.
different screen to different screen. So
if you're wondering, that's what's happening.
that's why. Yeah, that's why.
We're trying to be inclusive.
Get everybody involved. That's the goal. Well, we're excited to get started tonight and jump into tonight's topic. It's been so good. We've got so much feedback.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are commenting on their gratitude, how much they really like us using the key.
Yes.
And going through the 7 or the 8 coping skill process.
Right.
And going through them one by one and using the book, which has been fun too. So
Yes.
hopefully all of you are jumping on, and if you go to Amazon and just type in Dean N. Nixon or Dean Nixon, it'll bring up the key.
There it is.
And you can pick it up on Amazon and or the 4 Steps to Confidence too, which I encourage everybody to read.
Yeah. Or come on in and hang out with us.
Yeah.
And you'll get a copy.
Yes. Come work.
Yeah.
Do the work.
Exactly.
And we'll help you work through those things. So excited.
So what's been fun for me too, because it's kind of like a little bit of a miniature book club, even a little bit. Like that's been super fun.
Yeah.
So if you're just joining us, like we've been talking about, we've been going through the key chapter by chapter, learning different coping skills as we follow Isaac through his journey, learning all of the different coping skills as well. So if you go back in our feeds in Facebook and on YouTube and all that stuff, you're going to be able to find all those other videos. So if you haven't been following along, you can get caught up. We still got 3 to go.
Yeah, we got 3 more.
3 more.
3 more.
So, but tonight we join Isaac as he learns about the coping skills of faith and hope.
Yes.
And I absolutely love this one. I love it because this chapter is set in our backyard.
In St. George.
Here in St. George, Utah.
Yeah.
So it's really familiar to me, being a desert rat and having grown up here my whole life, to really be able to dive in and get some visuals while I was reading this chapter.
Yes.
They spent some time up in Zion National Park and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So Dean, fill us in. Who are we meeting here in this chapter with faith and hope?
So Isaac in this chapter, he's meeting up with a man named Chad, and Chad is a climbing guide, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of red cliffs around here, and so he's a climbing guide, and so Isaac comes to St. George, and he's able to participate in that with Chad and goes with him. I'm trying to think of how much to say. It's hard. It's like, what am I going to say?
I'll put you on the
spot.
spot.
Like with the interesting thing, and I don't share this all the time, but most of the stories that are in here, a lot of them are well, not all of them, but the majority of them are all personal experiences. And Chad happens to be a real person. His name is Chad Farr. And he's a really good friend of mine, and he is a rock climbing buddy of mine, and we've climbed forever and together, and just one of the neatest guys you'll ever meet. And so I put in a little cameo of him in the book.
I love it.
And brought it here to St. George so I could do that.
So if you've never been here to St. George and you're a rock climber, you gotta come.
Yeah, come. I'll take you out.
Yeah. DM Dean and get a private session.
There you
he
go.
and Chad will take you climbing.
There you go. Not only will he take you climbing, you'll get to do your life coaching piece, like you're saying. It'd be a lot of
absolutely. That would be super cool. So here Isaac is with Chad, and he's kind of like working with him.
Yes.
It's not just like, hey, we're gonna go have a ton of fun and just do a ton of climbing. Like everywhere Isaac goes, he puts in a ton of work. And I love that about Isaac, and especially as we learn the coping skills, because life is not easy. Right. It often takes a ton of work, and especially as we're applying all the coping skills, because it's like we were talking about a little bit last week, it's super easy to fall back into our old, not productive patterns, right? Like to just numb out and just not really cope, even though we pretend like they're coping skills, right?
Right. With our pseudo coping skills,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
with the social media, television, substances, all that. Yep. Those are the ones we think are healthy.
Right. And really they're just avoidant tactics.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so he puts in a ton of work. He in the chapter, he says that he feels like a pack mule as he's like going with Chad and all the different guests that he takes out.
Yes.
To learn how to climb, because he works at the spa here in town. Or
yes,
what?
At one of the resorts here at town, they employ them to take them out. And in a lot of ways, if you've ever done guiding, which, I love taking groups out, you are a pack mule.
Yes.
And there's a lot of rope and gear that you wind up hauling back and forth.
So finally Isaac gets the opportunity to be able to climb, because he's been working for a while and never once done any climbing. And so finally Chad's like, all right, let's do this.
Right.
And so just some of the pieces that I've pulled out from this chapter to share with you guys. So I am on page 62. Where, let me see if I can back up just a minute.
So this is where they're allowing, Chad finally gets Isaac up on the rocks, is to start climbing. And it really is one of those experiences that, as I was sharing, that draws from my own personal life experience of that first experience on the rock, where you're learning the relationship with the shoes that you wear, the rope, the gear, etc. And it really is a metaphor for life, and it is a scary moment. And that's why I wanted to use this as an experience. Is when you're climbing, it can be very, very scary. It can be a very scary experience. You're exposed, you're high up, and there's a lot of times that you don't quite know where to go and what to do. And in a lot of ways, that's why climbers, why we love climbing, is because as we've talked about in the book, the first coping skill is focus. And it's intriguing how much when you're climbing, you have to focus on the moment you're in. You can't be focused on anything but where you are in that space, because it's literally, you're going to either fall or you're going to stay on the rock based upon how well your focus is. But the other piece is that as you're climbing, you have to trust the elements. You have to trust the rock. You have to trust the person belaying you. You have to have all of this with you, and that's where faith and hope comes in.
Mm-hmm. I love it, because in our Monday night, oh dear, so sorry, hang on. There we go. In our Monday night family support group, Dean, you go over the coping skills.
Yes. On
kind of a rotational basis. If there's time at the end of everybody's kind of processing and chat, then you get to go over a coping skill. And that's how I first got introduced to Turning Leaf, was I came to that family support group to gain skills with my family. And I love that part of when you're talking about this is not only do you have to have faith in like the rock and the gear and everything else, but also in like your shoes, in you, in your guide. Like there's so many different places that you have to put that faith and trust in.
Right. And that's the interesting thing about it is in this concept of faith and hope as a coping skill. So hope is what combats depression. So depression comes when we have this feeling of hopelessness, helplessness, no options, no alternatives. So really, to combat, the answer to overcoming depression is really start to create hope in your life. And what I found in working with human beings is that hope comes as you express faith.
I love
so
that.
Once you start to express faith and you start to put yourself out there and you start to move and you start to do the hard things, that's when you start to have hope, because you start to see the results. And so in this experience, Chad is got Isaac up on the rocks and he's climbing, and Chad's guiding him. He's like, put your, where do I put my foot? Where do I put my hand? Where do I go? And it gets to a point where he can no longer hear Chad. Chad can no longer see him, because the rock starts to, and this, like I said, this is a personal experience, my very first time climbing. And as I'm climbing up and the rock starts to kind of fade away, I couldn't see him anymore. He couldn't see where I was anymore. And that's when that really cool moment comes. I'm wondering if that's the part you wanted to read.
Well, it's a little bit before then. So let's catch everybody up.
I
real quick.
apologize.
It's
I jumped
okay.
ahead.
So I'm on page 61. Right at the bottom, we're going to flip over to 62. Here's the thing, Isaac, Chad said next. Faith is the first step. My son was a paratrooper in the Army, and they pounded this idea into his head. Trust the equipment. In other words, once you've done all the safety checks and you know the chute is packed properly, don't think about it anymore. Just jump. It's the same thing here. I have great faith in the systems I use for climbing and the equipment. Yes, accidents happen. Yes, I will sometimes feel fear, but I can minimize and push past those things with the best equipment and best attitude. Isaac says, you keep saying that about the best attitude. What do you mean? He said, I'm still talking about faith or hope or whatever you want to call it. As soon as I give faith some power, some energy, and this is what you were talking about, I can take one more step, move one more foot or inch, and then the faith snowballs and my confidence increases and I can see new possibilities. I just love that.
Yeah.
Because like you were saying, that is exactly the momentum that you need in order to be able to continue to just make one more little step.
Right.
You see far enough in front of you with that little bit more light that you've created. You create a little bit more hope, a little bit more light, and you can keep moving forward.
Right. And that doesn't come sitting down. That doesn't come waiting. You know, you can't sit at the bottom of a climb and make it to the top. You have to literally start applying, and that's where the answers come when you start to move.
And I love it in here too, Chad starts to address that little aspect of fear, because that can be a huge hindrance, right? Like that fear that can overtake us sometimes and hold us hostage from making those little faith step movements forward. So he says, when we can add a sense of value to our fear, such as the desire to push through to the next peak, that next goal in life, then we can challenge the fear. And when we come out on the other side of fear, we feel more hope and we can create a vision of how we want things to be.
Yes.
Oh gosh, that's so powerful.
Well, and that's the part, you know, it is a matter of creating that hope in those adverse moments. And it is, what am I making? What am I creating? Why am I doing what I'm doing?
Absolutely. And I think especially in today in our society, we have so many things that plague us that really do root in that fear, right?
Right.
All that anxiety stuff that we were talking about, depression, all that kind of stuff. And if we can just push through it and find the value, like Chad was teaching us here, then we can really start to make some significant improvements in our situation. Yeah. So let's get back to the point that you were talking about.
Now, I do have to clarify. That part's the fictional part that has the metaphors and the lessons in it. This part is actually a true, actual event that what you're about to read. I just want to clarify that.
Perfect. So here we are. Now we're over on page 63. Walking up to the base of the tower, he tried to muster all his faith in Chad. So this is Isaac at the base of the tower. In Chad, in the gear, in himself, and in what he had learned those past weeks. The climb was difficult and physically demanding on his whole body, and at one point his left fingers went a little numb after he held on in a specific spot for 10 minutes looking for the next move. About halfway up the largest section he had ever attempted to traverse, Isaac lost it. He didn't know where to go and didn't dare look down. Faith be damned, he wanted down now. And we get to those places in our life.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So Isaac yells, Chad, I'm stuck, man. I'm stuck right here. Can you guide me which way to go? Up, Isaac, up. Chad yelled back. Always up.
Yeah.
And we loved that.
And that's what he said. And I'll never forget the moment where I'm like, where do I go next? And he just, this voice just from the bottom, he's like, up, up, always up. And I'm like, you dog, that tells me nothing. But the interesting thing about it was at that moment, and that's why I wrote it in this story, was at that moment is when I looked up to my left and I saw just a little bit of a ledge, enough to grab for my hand, and I had already had another one for my hand and my other foot. So I knew that if I pulled up on that something would present itself. I knew, I had faith that if I just moved on that one, the next answer would come. And I had hope of that. And that's where that faith and hope came, as I realized this, as I expressed that faith in that hold and expressed faith in moving on that, that's when the next answer came. And all of a sudden I'm sitting up at the very top. I'm looking over this beautiful canyon, a view that most people will never see in their lives. And it was the most incredible experience. And that's why I had to write it and put it in the book. You know, there's a lot of what do they call it? Writer's artistry or whatever in there to make it a little bit more...
Creative expression.
Yes, creative expression to make it a little bit more, I don't know, palatable and fun. But it was a very powerful experience. But from that is where I learned that coping skill of faith and hope. And we have to have the faith, and we have to express the faith to create the hope. Now, a lot of times people create or take faith and they couch it under religion where it belongs, and under spirituality where it belongs. But it doesn't always have to be a religious spiritual thing. Sometimes it's having faith in yourself, or having faith in the moment, or having faith in a friend, etc., which can be argued that that's a spiritual experience in and of itself as well. However, we don't always have to have that. And I know in the past when I've talked to people, I bring up faith and hope, and they get a little turned off because they think I'm going to start preaching to them. And it has nothing to do with preaching. It has to do with just the honest truth. And what you just heard, that's the honest truth. That's where faith and hope come in.
I can think of so many different kind of avenues and experiences that happen in people's lives where we can apply this very thing that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with spirituality, right? Like if you're feeling like, oh gosh, I'm really not satisfied in my job, and I know that something better is around the corner, and you take that next step, you know, like that's that faith piece. Like you just keep moving forward, keep going to that next job interview, keep trying, even though you don't really know what's going to happen, right? You just have to have hope that it's going to work out.
That's right.
And you can always, I think, personally, my personal belief system is you can always include your higher power in whatever spiritual venue you want to help you with that.
I encourage that.
Absolutely. But just that movement, that up, always up, right? Create that motion is where that faith piece comes in. Yeah.
Such a powerful piece.
Too cool.
Well, it's been great. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We're actually running on time today. I'm pretty excited. Usually we run a little long, but
you get kind of windy.
It is a great thing. And again, we encourage you all to use these coping skills. Go back through and look through and read through and watch these videos so that you can like them and share them. They are an important aspect of who we are. We are in a world right now where we are very intolerant of discomfort. And I had this thought over the weekend that was so interesting as I was kind of thinking about it. And some of you out there will probably be able to relate to this. Is we spend so much time worrying about a moment in time that's coming. So maybe it's a conflict that you have to have at work, or an experience that you're uncomfortable about, or going somewhere that you're not comfortable going. And we have this moment, and it's maybe going to last 2 to 3 hours at the best, right?
Most likely moments.
Moments.
Right?
Minutes. But we will focus on the discomfort that moment is going to create for days. And so we allow those moments, those things we're afraid of being uncomfortable with, we allow those moments to become our focus so much that we miss the moments we're in, and we miss being present every day. And it's all because we're so afraid of being uncomfortable. And the only way that we're going to deal with our emotional discomfort is through coping skills. Using these coping skills and using them to your advantage is the most powerful thing that you can do. And if you need more help on that and figuring out how to make it work, come in, sit down with us as coaches, work through the workbooks, work through the pieces that'll help you get the answers you're really looking for.
And another thought I'm having, because I love that you're bringing that up, is the fact that Isaac had Chad. Right? He had, even though at one point Chad couldn't see him anymore, and just the instruction was just keep moving up, keep moving forward. So find that place for you. If it's with us, please come hang out. We love that. But find those accountability partners, those people in your life who can help guide you.
Yes,
through your
and
stuff.
Make sure that they're people that know what they're talking about.
Yes, and that can cheerlead you, because sometimes that's what you need too.
Yep. Well, as always, thank you again for tuning in. It's been a wonderful, great Monday Night Live.
Yes.
And we look forward to seeing you next week, Memorial Day weekend. Well, Monday isn't the weekend, but hopefully you'll have a great weekend.
We'll be here.
We'll be here.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next Monday Night Live.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.
Oh, my hands are going everywhere.